Hey guys, it's Jen. This is another episode of Reframing Me, and I am your host, Dr. Jennifer Brubaker. So, you all have been following along with my journey this school year as senior year for my oldest. Graduation is on Friday, and emotions have been running very high around here. I mean, I'm actually doing remarkably well about it at times. Have I melted down also a number of times over really stupid things? Absolutely, 100%. But I did survive senior walk last Friday, which if you don't have that where you are, senior walk is when they go back to their middle schools. But for us, it was even cuter because it was a K-8 they went to. So they had been there since they were babies. So they parade in their different caps and gowns and t-shirts of where they're going off to college, and they walk down in front of all the little ones, which of course, it seems to me, looking at them, that it was just yesterday that they were those little ones. And then you see them with actual little ones, and we're like, oh my God, you're fully grown adults. But, it's funny. It's not those big things that seem to get to me. It's the little ones, like the strangest little things that are upsetting. Like when the pediatrician's office says that he'll come for, quote, one final visit. Just stab me in the heart, why don't you? And she was like, oh, this one final visit before he spreads his wings and leaves. Like, come on. She says it so casually, like, oh, no big deal. Spoken like the true mother of elementary school age children that she is, right? She'll be here someday, and she has no idea how quickly that day will arrive, right? So exams and classes are over for everyone, and we're just now in this weird little limbo. Like, let's just pull this Band-Aid off already. My husband and I are each handling this in our own way. And I don't want to say what I'm thinking, which is that probably neither one of them are healthy. Because who knows? Maybe they are. Maybe, like everything else, there isn't one way to deal with something, especially something as significant as your first child graduating. So everyone starts arriving today, and the whole weekend will be full of festivities. I, of course, honestly have been quite out of sorts. I mean, I'll tell it to you straight. It has been an existential crisis over here, questioning everything that I have done, every decision that I've made. It's spilled over into questioning all of my work choices and my abilities and where am I going in life, like straight up existential crisis. And I was honest with my kids this morning. I wanted to set the expectations. I'm like, so I'm just really off. I cannot get it together. I have already cried, and I don't even know why I was crying. And I think it is just how it is going to be from here on out this week. So we're all just going to need to deal with it. Okay? Okay. But even in my current state of on again, off again existential crisis, I could not let summer start without an episode to kick it off. So we are going deep into the vault to almost a year ago now, and we are upcycling an episode that is a super good conversation to revisit this time of year, as many of us are planning some type of summer travels with our teens. I know that we have so many new listeners who have joined us since last July. And I want to take a second to tell you how much I thank you all for that. I know that so many of you have spread the podcast to your friends, and then you all have come back week after week, joining me on this journey. And I love doing this so much. And I don't think that I take enough time to tell you how grateful I am that you are all on this journey with me, knowing that so many of you are out there experiencing the very same things. It's just always comforting and heartwarming to feel that. I hope that you all can feel the support as much as I do. So I hope that you enjoy revisiting travel, which I have booked our plane tickets and literally nothing else. So yes, after I make it through this weekend, travel planning is next on my to-do list. But I hope that you enjoy revisiting our conversation about traveling with teens, and I will see you all on the other side of graduation. I have been gone a couple of weeks, and we just got home from our vacation a couple of days ago, and I have finally managed to get everything unpacked and laundry finished, and yay! So yay me. Although I must tell you that as packing goes, I don't think I've ever packed so poorly for a trip, like ever. I completely underestimated the heat of Greece. And I live in the South, so I'm used to heat, but I did. It kind of felt like I imagined the surface of the sun feeling. And, so I didn't pack appropriately at all. I mean, I brought my swimsuits that were all cute and perfect, and I was happy in those, thank heavens. But like my outfits, I was not happy with the outfits that I chose. And of course, then yesterday I was looking for something in my closet and I'm like, oh, yeah, should have brought that. Oh, now that would have been perfect. Why didn't I remember that? Do y'all do that too? Anyway, we are super excited to be home, but we also realized that we were really, really fortunate that we had this opportunity to take this vacation. I know it, and the kids realize too that we are beyond lucky to have the chance to travel like we do as a family. We have always tried to travel with the kids since they were babies. I would guess it was about like 2010-ish when I came across an article that was something like the 20 places you need to take your kids before they're grown or something like that. And I remember sending it to my husband, and no lie, I have gone back into our Facebook messages so very many times to find that article and refer back to it. I think that traveling, it's always helped that we have just always traveled with the kids. And part of that is probably due to the fact that we live like 800 miles away from our family. So we started from when they were babies, taking them up to Ohio for visits or for events. And it's kind of like once you've committed to 24 hours of driving with small children round trip, unless you really need to do the Cannonball Run, which we have definitely done the Cannonball Run between North Carolina and Ohio, which I don't recommend, but it is possible. You might as well make a vacation out of it, right? So from the very beginning, we would like go to Cleveland or Columbus, and make a vacation out of it. And then we would branch out a bit to Pittsburgh and to Hershey, Pennsylvania. And then we found Langhorne, Pennsylvania and Sesame Place, which was like the cutest, sweetest place in the world to take them as toddlers and preschoolers. And we went back there a number of times. We had family in New York. So we took them there for holidays, or another of my super best friends lived outside of DC. So we would go there to visit her and see the city and go to museums. And of course, the kids' favorite part, which was all they really wanted to do, was ride the metro and hang out in the metro station. I am pretty sure, in fact, that DC was the first time that I ever traveled with them alone. It was actually just the boys. It was so long ago because they were super little. And I felt so brave and so adventurous. And I must admit, if I'm being honest, I felt a bit rebellious because no, my husband and my mother were definitely not happy about me traveling with the two little boys. But I did it anyway. So look at me, such a rebel, right? Not really a rebel at all, but that felt very rebellious. Disney trips for us have always involved Christmas gifts for years and years and years. And that started because I just couldn't deal with all of the coming up with gift suggestions for family and just extra stuff around. So I'm like, hey, why don't you instead contribute to going to Disney? And it was a great way for us to get to take them to Disney each year. So I guess you could say that early on, our travel was born out of excuses to go places, if that makes sense. Like, hey, we need to go to Ohio for this. We may as well make it a vacation and swing through Sesame Place on the drive home. Or so-and-so lives here, so we may as well use it as an excuse to visit. Or when my husband would be traveling for work, or like when I had conferences to travel for work, we may as well use that excuse and any extra funding that we can get to make a family vacation out of it. But our trips weren't necessarily even far or even long. We've done lots of just weekends at Great Wolf Lodge or Busch Gardens, just a few hours away, not a long stay, not super elaborate or crazy expensive, but just excuses to just be together away as a family, just the five of us. Traveling has always given us like a little bubble or a cocoon wrapped around us that lets us just be in an entirely different way than we ever are at home, which to me, this part is actually the best part of family travel. Yes. Obviously, the experiences and the places and the sites are totally a very close second, or we wouldn't go to amazing places like Greece or Switzerland or Paris or whatever. But it's what makes 3-hour drive trips to Charleston or to Great Wolf Lodge or 5-hour trips for us to stay at an Airbnb in Blowing Rock. It makes them nearly as magical as a, trip to Amsterdam. It doesn't need to be elaborate to get the same benefits from it. So you might be thinking, yes, I would love to travel abroad, but I can't. And that's totally understandable. And it's just a matter of thinking, okay, what's an hour away from you? What's 2 hours away from you? Is it a city or the beach or the mountains or a park? Or maybe you're into camping or an Airbnb. I know Airbnb tends to get a bad rap sometimes, but I will say I am a huge fan. Just go somewhere together, anywhere, and just be together, because that is what makes a family vacation. Now, we have been fortunate enough to take the kids to so many beautiful cities and countries, and the sights and the experiences will change based on the location, but the underlying goodness and closeness that comes from it will not change. And that is why you 100% should do family vacations regularly, whether they're big trips to Europe or quick trips to an Airbnb an hour away from your house. It doesn't matter. I hope that you're all like, okay, yay, you sold me. We're going to do some type of family vacation. Awesome. I am so excited for you. But first, let's have our conversation today. 10 reflections on traveling with teens. So that way you have an idea of what I'm getting you into. It certainly wouldn't be fair for me to just send you off without preparing you for what it's in store. And from our travels, I can tell you with 100% certainty, it does not matter if you are driving or flying or taking a train or a boat, or if you're going 100 miles away or 5,000 miles away. If you're going to a high rise in a city or a yurt in Idaho. And yes, we have done that too. These are 10 universals about traveling with teens. Okay, first, and to be honest, as much as I hate when my students start a speech or a paper or whatever with first and foremost, I just caught myself about to say it. So, but 100% first and foremost. Okay, let them be a part of the process. I really often hear from people, my kids don't want to go on vacation with me anymore. Or should I even make my 15-year-old go on vacation with us? Or my daughter just wants to stay in a hotel room. Or my son just makes everybody miserable because he doesn't want to be there. Well, my advice to combat that is exactly this. Let them be a part of the process. Now, maybe your initial thought is, well, they should just be happy that I'm taking them somewhere. But by asking for their input and by including them in the making of the plans, they're going to be much more positive about the entire experience. By giving them suggestions or bouncing ideas off of them or asking them for suggestions or ideas, they're going to become invested in the trip and get excited about it. Really, what you're doing is making it their trip, not just your trip that you're letting them come on. Even if you just start out by making a list of all of the places, near and far, big and small, anything that you'd all like to go. Yes, some of the ideas might seem very far-fetched right now, but it all starts somewhere. And once you land on a destination, then you can start making plans from there. You can start researching and finding out what there is to do there and make sure that it has things that all of you enjoy them too. If you love museums, great. Find somewhere with museums. But if you have a teen who isn't into that, you also need to balance it out with things that they're into too. Obviously, you want to be happy on your trip, but having happy people that you're with will ultimately make the trip better for you too. Including them in the process and in the planning will make them more invested. But do warn you, don't be surprised if they're not super stoked in advance. Like when you're planning the trip, you want everyone to be excited about everything because it's very tangible to you because you're the one researching and making the plans. But for them in the early stages, and for my group, everything early is like prior to packing. I swear, no one, not even my husband, no one gets the slightest bit excited until we're literally packing or maybe even walking out the door. It could make me crazy if I let it, but I still tell them the plans as I make them and I still ask for opinions and feedback, even if I feel like they're like, yeah, whatever. And I don't let their lack of enthusiasm frustrate me. But I do take to heart the bits and pieces of feedback that they do give me. Second, expect it to be challenging and don't get frustrated when it is. I remember on an old Modern Family that we watched like a bazillion times when Phil said to Claire about being on vacation. And she's like, I'm a mom traveling with my family. This isn't a vacation, it's a business trip. And it's kind of true, right? It's hard playing Julie the cruise director. You guys remember Julie the cruise director from Love Boat? I always say I feel like Julie the cruise director for everyone. Answering the same questions over and over, having everyone expect you to have all of the answers. It can be exhausting. And having traveled with the same group for years and years and years, I will say in some ways, of course, it's easier to travel with teens. Yes, of course. But it is shockingly harder to travel with teens in a lot of ways too, which honestly has really, really surprised me. Like, for example, they just aren't listening. I don't want to say that they don't listen because like when we think listen, like they don't do what they're supposed to or whatever. And that's not what I mean. I literally mean they aren't listening. Like they'll ask me a question and look at me as I answer, and yet they're somehow not listening. I don't know. I can't process it. It's like you don't see, it's just not making sense to them. They're not listening. They wander. When they were traveling, when they would be like, 7, 5, and 4 or whatever, there's no way that you could have convinced me that traveling would ever be harder than that. But you know what? At that point, I could hold their hands. I could make them hold on to each other. I could make them all stand in the line. I could corral them. But now they wander. And back then, it was me. I knew what to do and I knew where to go and I would tell them and they did it. But now, well, now everyone has an opinion and everyone knows the answer and everyone thinks that their way is the right way. And we'll be in a strange airport in a foreign city and I'm looking for the signs and suddenly each of them knows the quote unquote right way to head. And even worse, they'll each start heading that way. There's no corralling, no more stick togethers, no more hold hands, just off in 3 separate directions. And it's hard. There's no two ways about it. Traveling in general is hard. Traveling in a family is hard. Traveling with teens is hard. So to get frustrated or angry because it's hard is unfair because going in, it's going to be hard. Third, be flexible. I'm a planner. I've told you this many, many times. The key to traveling with teens and making plans is in the balance. You need to have enough plans that you don't end up scrambling on a street corner trying to decide what to do, or you don't end up sitting in a hotel room wasting half of a day trying to figure it all out. But you also can't have so much plans that there isn't flexibility. Some things will be a hit and some things won't. You might get there and see something that someone is like, oh, I want to do that. It's like, well, yes, that's why I was asking for your opinion for the last 6 weeks. But anyway, or plans might fall apart and you need to find a backup. Like we were super excited to ride horses on the beach. Okay. And they even said how you would ride into the ocean sunset. I'm like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing in the world. Right. And so, we had these plans. Well, then all of a sudden the woman is like, well, I only want cash. And I'm like, yeah, girl, we'd all prefer to be paid in cash. But imagine I cannot travel with enough euros to pay everyone who wants to be paid in cash. And her card machine was supposedly broken. She said she'd drive me to an ATM. That's a hard no. I watch movies. I am not going to be human trafficked. Okay. So I call her bluff because it didn't seem like anyone really except Ever and I really, really cared to go. And as soon as I backed out of what was really a realistically overpriced ride, guess what miraculously happened? Her card machine was fixed. Hallelujah. Praise Jesus. Well, now it's just a matter of principle, right? I can't do this because I have to stand my ground. So we found something else to do. But thanks. We hired a boat for our first full day in Santorini. I had lots of activity options planned as possibilities for day 2. But everyone was so happy and had so much fun on day 1 that we couldn't determine anything more that we could want. So we opted to do the boat again. All right. Maybe if you're going solo or you're a couple traveling, you can wing it. But with a group of impatient teens, nope, you need a plan to some degree. But you also need options and flexibility to account for their likes and their dislikes, their weather, the weather and their weather, I guess, too, their moods, and so on. You really need to be able to read the room and have plans that you can adjust accordingly. Number 4, and relatedly, you never know what activities are going to be a hit and what won't. Sometimes you have something that goes over so well that you can't get enough, like the boat. And other times things just kind of fall flat. And sometimes they just surprise you entirely. When we were on Naxos, we rented a car. And of course, in Greece, like in the rest of Europe, cars aren't like cars in the US. They are teeny tiny and definitely smaller than my Suburban, right? And I have 3 adult-sized children, all of whom are at least my size, but realistically bigger. Okay, I offered the front seat up to somebody, but the condition was that they would then need to navigate. And because we have all ridden with my husband, we kind of knew the level of accountability and patience that would require. So instead, they happily took their phones into the back seat, squishing up, and left me with my Google Maps and the front seat. So you can picture us stuffed into a teeny tiny car. We looked like the clown car. And amidst this, I am dealing with the horsewoman via email and watching that plan fall through. And Naxos was awesome, but we had come from Santorini and it definitely wasn't Santorini. So we've kind of already had hit that natural is the best part of the trip behind us stage, right? And people were starting to miss home a bit. And, I feel like something else happened at that point. I can't really remember what it was. Maybe it was just bickering. I mean, they were stuffed in there like sardines, or maybe there was an actual issue. I don't know, because it's irrelevant anyway. It was all just kind of a messy start to the day, which of course made me upset because I wanted everything to be great. And I'm like, oh my God, we're only halfway through this trip. And is this even going right? And is everybody even having fun? And did I do this right? And blah, 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 all the questions, that I have going through my head. And you know what? We ended up having the best day. In fact, everyone said it was at the top for a very favorite part of the trip. We just drove for hours on mountain roads. We saw the countryside along these cliffs. And of course, we had some random radio station on in Greek because, as my husband said, that the music turned it from a terrifying drive to feeling like we were on a ride at Disney. And yes, the kids were on their phones on and off, and I'm certain that one had an AirPod in. But so what? They were also looking out the windows. They were the ones taking pictures because obviously I had to be locked into my Google Map navigation. They were walking around with us when we stopped and eating with us at lunch and having ice cream with us when we stopped. And we were seeing new and different things together. But the day had seemed like it was going to be rough. The activity felt a bit lame because essentially it was a let's go for a ride, like I take my dogs on, right? It was overall, it didn't sound great, but it was super fun. I never thought that that would be a favorite part of the trip. So you never know what is going to be a hit. And the horse thing, I totally thought that would be like the highlight. But when it actually came down to it, 3 of the 5 people didn't even care in the slightest. And the one who I was really doing it for, she never even mentioned it again. She never even said like, oh, I wish we had done that. So I'm glad I didn't cave into the shady horse lady. Which brings me very organically to number 5. Emphasize unofficial traditions to instill memories. This rent a car and drive around thing, it wasn't entirely new to us. We did similar driving around in Iceland, and we drove all the way from Zion National Park in Utah to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Not to even mention the countless hours that we have spent on road trips to Ohio and Pennsylvania and DC and Florida and around North Carolina. And so in a way, it's a bit of a tradition for us to do drives. So I definitely did push that angle at the start of the day when I was trying to make it seem a bit more exciting than I felt like it actually was. I was like, hey, remember how much fun we had driving around Iceland? And remember when we stopped at that falls and we were looking at it until all of a sudden I realized that it was very likely one of them would overreact to another's existence and shove them, which would inadvertently push them over the waterfall. So I frantically made us leave. I remember all of those things and I remind them of those things. That's how you create traditions. Like, even we always bring silly card games with us, like Uno and Go Fish. And we talk about how we used to bring Old Maid until we kept dropping cards to the deck beneath us when we were on a deck in Copenhagen. For us to sit around at night after our activities are over for the day. It is, we just mindlessly play these games and we talk and we share stories about the past. And we end up talking about those other vacations as well as the things that happened in those days. And we talk about like the one time in Utah when we were sitting and playing cards and that creepy Airbnb owner showed up to check on his taxidermy in the garage, which that wasn't weird or anything, right? But it's the little traditions like that. In Greece, obviously, there are tons of cats. And one apparently lived on the porch of our villa and would just walk in the front door. Like literally, if the front door was open, this cat just walked in and went to the refrigerator. Clearly, it was used to being fed. So we fed it. Okay. So, it became like, we always seem to have animals around us, right? Remember the puppy that we found and had to return to his owner when we were at the yurt. And remember the cat in the Italian restaurant in Amsterdam that we named Noki and like because of the cat and Curious George. But traditions, again, you never know what will create a tradition for you. And 6th, now, I don't want to give you the impression that my family is totally flawless, especially when we travel. In fact, obsessing over Noki the cat in Amsterdam was actually in response to one such imperfect situation where somebody happened to be having a meltdown, who I will not name. However, the funny thing is, no one even remembers that part. But keep in mind, you are traveling with teenagers, whether it's 1, 2, 4, or whatever number. It doesn't distract from the fact that they are teenagers. And very likely, if you're like me, you're also traveling with a partner who may or may not also behave like a teenager at times. So, probably the strongest point I can make, the biggest takeaway, biggest takeaway that has now somehow gotten buried here at point number 6 or whatever, there will be pouting and bickering. Someone will be mad or upset or pouty or disgruntled at seemingly almost all times. It's like a relay, right? Someone has the pouting baton and then they pass it off to someone else. Or 2 will be bickering over the pouting baton, or someone will be annoyed because someone else has the baton and they want it, but it passes. It only feels like it's constant. I know I'm totally being dramatic saying that it's constant, but the fight or the pout or the sass, it will pass. Don't let it upset you. Expect it and let it pass. Like those clouds floating over your holiday, unless you're in Greece. We did not see a cloud for 8 days, which accounted for the heat and accounted for why I was packed so poorly. But a passing shower or storm, it will pass. And the sky is blue underneath. The happiness and the good times, they're under there. Just let the storms pass, ride them out. Number 7, what is the old saying? What can go wrong will go wrong. Well, it's definitely the same on trips. Things will go wrong. Flights will be delayed, or hotels won't be as pictured, or someone will get a bloody nose or an ear infection, and you'll end up navigating the Irish healthcare system. That was super fun. But as an aside, if you're going to need urgent care on vacation, I highly recommend Ireland. Their healthcare system is phenomenal. But someone will lose something, or you'll get lost and you'll end up missing a train in Italy like we did. Whatever. Things happen. Go with the flow. This is again where flexibility comes in handy. Very little is actually the end of the world. It might feel like it, but it's not. You're literally on vacation. Yes, of course. No one wants these things to be more perfect than I do. I understand. You want it perfect, but it won't be, and it's fine. In fact, those moments that feel like the end of the world, those are going to be the ones that you talk about and you laugh about forever. And as much as you might like to try and plan, and as much as you want to plan, what you can't do, partly because of your need for flexibility, and partly because of the pouting or bickering, and partly because of what can go wrong will go wrong, but mainly because it's a vacation, but it's still life. And just like the rest of life, number 8, you can't manufacture moments. You just can't. You can manufacture experiences and plans, but you can't manufacture moments. Away from friends and girlfriends and boyfriends and people in and out, and mom, can I go here? And mom, I need you to drive me here. And I have practiced till 6. And well, I have practice that starts at 6, and all of the things in life that we're swamped with. But away from all of that, moments do organically occur. And those moments are what makes traveling with your teens so special. And these are the things that they will remember. They most likely won't remember details, especially if they're on the younger side. But really, I can't remember details. I don't know what the name of the falls was in Iceland or even what it even looked like. But I do remember the feeling of being like, oh, fuck. I can see it playing out in my head. He invades her space and she elbows him and he slips on the wet rocks and bumps into him and he gets mad and pushes and, oh my God, someone is going over the falls. We need to leave like now, right? I remember that feeling, and they do too. They remember the feeling and the experiences. They remember the togetherness. They remember the moments. It's not school. They're not studying up on the details for a test. those are irrelevant at the end of the day. It's the warmth and the love from those moments that you bring home with you. And those are the best souvenirs that you can get. And number 9, all of this togetherness. It allows you a space to see your family differently. You get to see your family as that system that we have talked about so many times. Remember, a system is made up of interdependent components, right? And we are each one of the components, and we're constantly impacting each other with our interactions. And our past interactions are impacting our future interactions. We have a boundary around us, around our family system, and inputs and outputs pass through that boundary. Well, at home, our boundaries are a lot more open than they are on vacation. Our boundaries on vacation are pretty rigid, right? When we're cocooned off together. So this more closed off system doesn't happen very often. It allows us the space to observe our family as a unit, to observe our interactions, to see who the people are actually and how they interact with each other when you remove those outside influences. You can be 50 miles from home or 5,000. It doesn't matter. Just being away together, it lets you see the system as it is so much more clearly. And it allows space for them to relax and even open up without those distractions that they don't have when you're at home. Just sitting around together, even if everyone does appear to be distracted in their phones, all of a sudden, someone will start talking. Or maybe you ask a question that may typically get a 1-sentence answer. And this time they talk and they talk and they talk. Again, you can't force this. You can't make it happen or manufacture the moment, right? No. But you can allow the space for it to occur organically. And number 10, this goes way back to our Manifest That Shit episode. And like probably, I don't know, 5 or 10 others that I've said this in. Number 10, don't take it personally. It's not necessarily about you. If they miss home or they don't want to be there, they want to go home, or maybe they want to text their friends, or maybe they don't even want to go in the first place. Okay. Your initial reaction might be like, hey, you should be so happy that you're even getting to go on vacation. Or, oh, I'm so sorry that you need to sacrifice and go on this wonderful vacation that I have planned for you and I have paid for. I'm so sorry, you poor thing. You know, life is tough. But don't take it personally because it's not necessarily about you. Remember, you may be going away to get away from life from a bit, right? That's typically our motive as adults for a vacation. But for teens, they often don't want to get away from life. They aren't looking for the same quote unquote break that we are. To them, from their perspective, it is actually more of a sacrifice to leave. But from our perspective, it looks like, oh yeah, poor thing, life is tough. I'm trying to force you to go on vacation. But from their perspective, they do feel like they're missing out. Their life and friends are going on without them. They are super social beings, right? What if they come back and they don't like them anymore? Or they've moved on from them? Yes, it kind of sounds silly to us, but we all know that teenagers can actually move on from people and do for a lot less reasons than that, right? They know that they're all hanging out together without them. They know that they're missing out. And it's not that they don't want to be on vacation. If you didn't take them and they see you or they see someone else on vacation, chances are that they'd feel like they were missing out too. They just want both, which of course they can't have. But it doesn't mean they don't feel like they're missing out on something or they would be missing out by being away. So no, it's not that they hate you or that they think you're awful or are unappreciative of a vacation. So don't take it personally, but do take the vacation. Thank you so much for listening and for spending this time with me. I sure hope today that you can take a breath and realize that this is something that you need to do and that you need to sometimes step out of your comfort zone, just like I needed to do today, right? If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends to keep helping us build our community. Find me on socials, on Instagram and TikTok at Reframing Me. On YouTube, it's Reframing Me. On Facebook, it's Reframing Me, and join the Facebook group Reframing Me, the podcast community. And the most exciting addition that I told you about right before I went on vacation is the website is now up and running, reframing-me.com. So until next time, be well, communicate, and don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone.